Hello, hello, my love. I hope this finds you doing so well. This week, you're in for quite a treat. My girl Goli Kalkhoran is here. She's just amazing. We have such an incredible conversation, and I think I'll have her back because there's so much depth to her work, and it resonates really well. Like there's a lot of it that overlaps with the work we do here around emotional outsourcing. She has dope feminist politics. She's also just really fun, and we laugh a lot and have a good time. So I'll have her back. Let me read her fancy pants bio to you because it's really good. Goli is a master certified life coach and former attorney who helps unfulfilled professionals create a career and life they actually like. She is the host of the Lessons from a Quitter podcast, where she uses her platform to destigmatize quitting and provide resources and inspiration to individuals looking to pivot in their established careers. She challenges people to exceed their own expectations and guide them through the initial steps of starting over in order to build a more intentional, fulfilling life. How dope is that? She's all about quitting the big things, the little things, and I think it's just amazing. It's really super duper inspirational, and we had a really fun conversation. So I'm excited to share it with you. If you are enjoying this podcast, this show, why not head on over to wherever you get your podcast, give us a 5-star rating and review. It helps the podcast to be more findable in search. It's a dumb system. I didn't create it. I'm just here hanging out in it. My goal is for this show to be of service. I have such incredible privilege, and here I'm speaking to educational privilege. I've studied quite a few things over these years, and I really want to share it with you. And so you giving a rating and review helps it get shared with more yous. So thank you in advance for taking just a little millisecond to do that. 5-star rating, written review. And the review can be podcast so good. Like, don't get all perfectionisty with it, all right? All right. All right, my beauties. Over to Golly. Okay, well, hello, hello. Welcome to the show. I'm so delighted to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so delighted to be here with you.
Oh my goodness gracious. Your work is so cool. I love the whole gestalt of everything you do. And I'm excited to dive in. Can we just dive in?
Let's just jump in. I love
Okay,
talking about
so
this stuff.
you love talking about quitting, which I think is so amazing, especially this time of year when everyone's like torturing themselves to start and keep going in things they
Yeah.
maybe never wanted to do in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of that.
There's a lot of that going around. It's like
Yeah.
its own little plague. And so, one of the questions I get a lot in my work, and I'm sure you get every 2.4 seconds, is how do we know that it's time to quit
Mm,
before we completely destroyed our lives? Right? Before
Such a
we've like, had a meltdown in the break room or screamed at our boss or cheated on our spouse or just
yeah.
literally burned our house to the ground. Like, how do we know?
Ah, that's such a good question. You know what's interesting? Actually, I was just thinking about this before we jumped on because so much of our work is so similar. And I will say
Mm.
this because I wish I had like an exact science for you to be like, this is the day that you should know how to quit. But
Step one.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But truly the answer comes down to like the more you know yourself, the more you get quiet in yourself, the more you are true to yourself, the easier it becomes to answer that question. Like the reason for so many
Mm.
people it's so hard to know is because we are so disembodied with ourselves and we are so used to doing everything we should do, everything everybody else
Mhm.
wants us to do, everything that's the right thing, the safe thing, like you don't quit your job, like that you keep that stable job, you stay in a marriage, you don't. And so many of us deep down know we want to leave or we know it's not the right thing or we know like very instantly. I talk about it all the time with like I knew on the first day that I walked into my legal job that like this is not for me. And yet
Yeah.
I worked for 7 years, as a lawyer.
Yeah.
But I knew
Mhm.
like my problem was that I was afraid. I was just afraid of what everyone was going to think of me. I was afraid of what I was going to do. I was afraid of throwing away, the sunk cost, all of that stuff. And so unfortunately the answer to that question is like really um getting quiet with yourself and really
Yeah.
understanding what is it that you want. And I know that that's not the answer a lot of people like to hear. Another way I would explain it though that I do think is easier to maybe get to is For a lot of us, we don't wanna make a decision until we don't realize we're doing this, maybe we do, where it's like you think you're after the quote unquote right decision. And what that means is like, I want to know it's going to work out. I want to know if I quit
Oh,
this
right.
job, I'm going to go to the next job and it's going to be wonderful. Or I want to know
Right.
if I
Mhm.
leave my marriage, I'm going to fall in love again, or I'm not going to be lonely, or it's going to be whatever. And like,
Right.
I don't have to tell you, like when we say it like that, like it's impossible to know how things are going to turn out, right? It is impossible to know where your life is going to go. And so a lot of what I like to do with my clients, or a lot of people that I help, is like knowing the reasons why you want to leave. Like you can't know what's going to happen afterwards, but we can know, how we got here and what why we're staying, why we're leaving. And just
Mm.
knowing the reasons illuminates so much. For so many people, if the reason why you're staying is simply because you're afraid, that's not a good enough reason to stay usually.
Right. Right, right, right.
If the reason is like I'm afraid I'm going to hurt this person, or I'm afraid that everyone's not going to like me, or I'm afraid that I'm not going to be able to cut it at another job, is that how you wanna live your life, where you're just constantly not doing things because you're too afraid to try something?
Right.
But if the reason becomes like, there's a lot of really good reasons, even if it's time to quit, that like, I'm gonna hunker down and save money for the next year. I can't quit because I need to pay off my debt, or I need
Right.
to create that. Okay, that's a great reason,
Sure.
right? And you can know
Right.
it's a short term, like we're gonna stay here until. So I always try to get people to like just switch sort of their lens. Like when you're constantly looking at the future and trying to predict what's gonna happen, and like that's gonna somehow indicate the time when you should quit, you're gonna wait forever because you're never gonna
Mhm.
know when is the quote right on, the right time. But when you do know, like, what is the reason why I'm doing this? And do I like my reasons? And as long
Right.
as you do, I think it's the right time to do it.
Yeah. My Billy and I have studied with the Buddhist teacher Lodro Rinsler, and he says that um, liberation is the exhaustion of confusion.
Oh, I love that.
Isn't that amazing? It's just so powerful,
Wow. It
right?
is.
So when you step into like right relationship with yourself and your choices and what honestly lands in the
Yeah,
right place for you in your body, there's so much more ease, right?
totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
And I feel like in my own work to cultivate internal safety was the antidote to that what felt like a need to predict the future. Right? Like
Yes.
I found more safety in
100%.
uncertainty because I knew I had my back.
100, and that's the only way. So that's exact. I feel the same exact thing.
Yeah.
And I think one of the biggest disservices that all of the programming or the society has done
Mhm.
to us is this lie that we bought into, that we can't trust ourselves, that somebody else has the
Mm.
answer, somebody else knows better than me, somebody else has the path. And so I'm constantly searching, and I think that a lot of us mistaken like trusting myself with always making the right, just like always choosing the right quote unquote thing that's going to turn out the way I want. But I agree with you. The more I learned, like, I can trust myself regardless of what happens. It
Yeah.
cannot go the way I thought, and I can still trust myself, and I can still create that safety within myself, and I can still have my own back, and I can still like, figure it out from there. Like the more I got grounded and the more I built that muscle, it truly was liberation. It truly was this thing of like, bring it on. Whatever happens, I'll figure it out. It's
Right.
not going to be an easy ride, but like I know not only myself, but I know that like I will love myself through this, and I will figure it out,
Mm.
and I will like allow myself whatever I need to be able to, move through this next stage. And it made it so much easier to not need to know then, because it's like, okay,
Right.
like it's like that exhale, like,
Yeah.
we got
Mhm.
this,
Yeah.
like we're going to be okay.
Yeah.
And I think too many people are still stuck in this like, no, no, but I need the answer, and like what's going to happen, and if I don't know, and if it doesn't go the way I want it to, I'm going to die. And it's like, no, but you're not, sweetheart. Like
You're not.
it's going to be
Yeah.
painful, maybe, but you're going to be okay.
I think the kitten steps, so I talk about how baby steps are way too big and no one should be out here taking a baby step. Like, come on. That's ridiculous. That's enormous. You're going to
That
fall
is
flat on your face. You're going to beat yourself up. It's antithetical to all of our desires here.
totally.
Antithetical, right? Don't take a baby step, silly
Yeah.
goose. Take a kitten paw step, like a
Oh,
newborn kitten paw, and they
I
just
love
like that. And if that's too fast for you, you can take a
yeah.
newborn turtle step.
Oh my gosh, so
Just
cute.
little tiny.
They're
And
so
so I'm
cute.
it's so cute and so tiny. And the turtles are hypoallergenic. We have like full full accessibility around here,
Yeah.
and so but, I'm always, like, thinking, "What's the kitten step?" Like, "How can I break this down to the
Yeah.
minutia?" And what I was hearing in what you said is, "Practice being kind to you." 'Cause you
Yes.
said so beautifully, "I knew I would love me through it."
Yeah.
Golly, that is
I
so
know. It's
beautiful.
so beautiful, and it's the thing is that it's so simple, and yet it's everything. You know what I
It's
mean?
everything.
And I
Yeah.
think that it can get we can roll our eyes at it, or it can sort of become trite. People have said it so much, and it's like, "Oh, I self-love," and you have to but one of the things that I had to learn, and I think, like, what I really try to teach people, even though they come to me because they wanna, like, quit their career, but part of this is, like, I started realizing it's really easy to love yourself when
Mm.
everything's going right, when you're winning,
Oh,
when you're
yeah.
successful, when you're doing all
Mhm.
when
Yeah.
everything is, like, going according to the plan and everybody else loves you and it's like, "Oh my god, this is like I'm killing it."
I'm the
But
best.
when you
Yeah.
need it is when things aren't going right, when things
Yeah.
aren't going wrong, when
Right.
maybe you're not showing up the way you even wanna show up, or maybe things are
Yeah.
happening that you didn't expect or whatnot. And I feel like the most powerful thing when I really realized, like, "Oh, I'm still allowed to love myself." Like, in my
Mhm.
flawed humanness, I'm still allowed to love myself, even if I'm not
Mhm.
maybe acting the way I wanna act, or doing the things
Right.
I wanna do, or I took the wrong step, or ignored the red flag, or I,
Right.
like, wanted something more than I should have wanted, and or whatever. Like, that's I feel like where I learned how to really create safety for myself was really like, "Oh, even through this,
Right.
I don't have to beat myself up. I don't have to,
Right.
like, whip myself. I don't have
Yeah.
to call myself nasty names." Like,
Right.
and then it became so much easier. I was like, "Oh,
Right.
okay.
Yeah.
Good or bad,
Yeah.
we got our own back."
Right. And I feel like for so many of the people I work with, there's this I don't wanna call it resistance, but it's like this pushing away of that,
Yeah.
right? Like, I'm not allowed to love myself if I mess up. And I
Yeah.
think what happens is so many of us heard over and over and over in childhood, right, that
Right.
if it wasn't A plus gold star, it wasn't perfect. Or like, did your parents critique other people's bodies? Like,
Yeah.
"Oh, mira
Yeah.
qué gorda. Look at her so fat."
Yeah. Yeah.
Uy. And so
All the
I learned my body had to be a specific slender one to to be a good person, right?
totally.
And so there's all these scripts where if we're not matching up, we're not allowed to love ourselves. And so loving ourselves when we are anything less than gold star is a betrayal
Yeah.
of our family blueprint. And I
Oh,
think that's where that real deep nervous system work is,
yeah.
right? Is to work with that inner child that's like, ooh,
Totally.
ooh, my mom won't love me. Ooh, my dad won't love me. Right? It's like I talk about how safety, belonging, and worth are the three most essential human needs.
Yeah.
And that moment of saying, I'm allowed to love myself, even if I F up.
So powerful. So powerful. Yeah, and it's fascinating when you say that, like, it got such a gut punch. It's like obviously, it comes from, like, everything comes from, like, your early childhood and stuff, but to really think, like, this is a betrayal of my family to, like,
Mm,
to accept myself like this as a flawed human, to
right.
love myself, to
Right.
not yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. It's an interesting thing.
yeah.
Yeah. I was talking with a Danish friend the other day who was saying, I don't know why this is like a big conversation that's happening in Danish American communities right now. She was telling me that like part of why they're so happy is they're comfortable in mediocrity.
Mm.
That it's not because they have this
Yeah,
amazing social support
right.
network, right? They don't
Yeah.
feel that same like westward ho, you
Being
have to be the best.
extraordinary, yeah.
Prove
Yeah.
yourself, prove yourself, prove
Yeah, yeah,
yourself,
yeah.
and can just
What a relief that must be.
right?
Breathe. I know.
Yeah.
I
I
think
know.
that there's also, like, like you said, I mean, really just thinking back about my own childhood and stuff, like, we've created so many defense mechanisms, right? And, like, I know
Mhm.
that, like, that, your little child brain, even when you heard those things about your body or whatnot, it was like it was this protective way of, like,
Yeah.
"Okay, I'm gonna be so hyper vigilant on
Right.
myself to make sure I never say the wrong thing and never say that, or never don't, eat what I shouldn't eat or whatnot."
Right.
And that part is still so active because it does think like, "I'm trying to protect you." Like, you're
Yeah.
gonna say something stupid and embarrass yourself, or and it's fascinating learning to, like, try to comfort that or put that, put that
Right.
at ease, like, we don't need that anymore.
We
It's
don't
okay
need it.
if we it's okay if I say something stupid, or it's okay if I mess up, or it's okay if I fail. And that's such a scary thing because for so long it wasn't okay. And I think that
Right.
that is like, I mean, I know all of our work, I think for me, a lot of my work has just been like, can I be okay with that failure? Can I be okay with not being perfect? Can I be okay with showing up fully human? Can I be okay with my humanness? Um, yeah.
Yeah. One of my favorite tools, I started this probably about a decade ago. It kind of dawned on me that, like, this is before like hashtag ADHD was trending. Like, I didn't really understand
Yeah.
being neuromagical. It wasn't like I had a diagnosis, but it was like, whatever.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, also,
Yeah.
yeah, it wasn't whatever, but it was like, I don't know what to do with this. And
Yeah.
so, but I know that I do walk into like door casings. I don't know how you call that, the frame.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
walk into those because I now understand my proprioception's off.
Yeah.
But but in the 80s and the 90s I was a spaz, right?
Right.
And I
Right.
spill things because I don't always, right,
Yeah.
that myopic vision. There's science to why,
Totally.
but I was teased for it, bullied for it, and beat myself up for it.
Yeah.
Right? The number of times, "Oh, Maria Victoria, I can't
Yeah.
believe you spilled whatever." And I was like, "I don't know how. How did I do that?" So now I just go, "Of course I did. Of
Yeah.
course I walked into that
Right.
frame." And the
Yeah.
more I can like claim it w- with some jokey light energy, it doesn't hurt anymore. It's
That's
just like, "Oh, well, doopy doo."
But that's such a beautiful example. I think, like, that's the entire point is, like, we have such absurd standards of, like, when you're saying, like, even just little things that, like, okay, who
Yeah.
cares that you bump into things? Like, it's not
Years.
changing things in life. Like,
Right.
okay, I mean, it's probably
No.
annoying for you because you might hurt yourself, but, like, otherwise, like, but we take things so seriously, right? Like, it's like,
Gosh.
and
Mm.
I just think that just that, like, of course I did this. Like, course, like, how
Of
human of me
course.
to
How
not see where
human
I'm
of me.
going. Yeah, like,
Right.
it's such a calming thing to realize every single one of us all day, every day is just imperfect, trying things, like, messing up, whatever. And like, it's wild to like think that we thought we could stamp that out of ourselves. Like at some point we were just going to become this
Mm.
robotic, like I do everything
Right.
perfectly. Like I don't ever
Yeah.
hit snooze. I woke up, like I wake up when I'm supposed
Right.
to, I, do all my tasks.
Right.
I never procrastinate. It's like,
Right.
it's just never going to happen.
No. No. I wanna just pause to say, I think I'm gonna have to make T-shirts that say, "How human of me."
I love that phrase. It's like one of my
Ooh.
favorite affirmations is
Maybe it should be mugs. "How human of me and how human of you." So when,
oh,
like,
so
your
cute.
kid spills, you're like, "How human of you." When you spill, "How human of me."
Totally. I go through that
Okay, great.
literally, I can't even tell you how many times a day, is how human of
Mm.
me, and of course, whatever it is, like, I
Of
just put in the con
course.
of course I did it. Of course
Of
I procrastinated.
course.
Of course I
Of
can't pay
course.
attention.
Of
Of course, like,
course.
because that is what a human brain does. And,
Right.
like, I think when you just let go of the stigma, because there's always these shoulds. I should be able to pay attention without procrastinating. I should know what I wanna do for my life. I should already, like, I can't tell you how many people, I should have had it figured out. I'm like, who
Yeah.
has it figured
Who?
out that you should have, you know? It's like, of
Right.
course you don't have it figured out because it's constantly changing.
Nobody
Of
has.
course nobody has it figured out, you know?
Right.
Just that, like, is like this, like, okay. We're all just trying to figure this out, right? Like, yeah.
Yeah. And I think that goes back to that not allowing our humanity as a way to attempt to manage the discomfort of the fact that
Yes.
the world is wildly and profoundly out of our
Yes.
control.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, which is an existentially scary fact.
Yeah.
The little Buddhist part of my brain is like, but what about non duality? We're all just dust. But we'll maybe leave that for next time.
It's another podcast.
That is another podcast, isn't it? But so can I switch gears, but not switch
Yes.
gears at all? We're gonna stay on
Go back to
quitting because
yeah,
obvi, you're the
yeah.
boss of quitting. How do I get up the gumption? Shout out to
Mm,
Judith Gatton for putting the word gumption back
I
in my
love
mouth. It's
that. I
so
love that.
good. It's so good. But
Yeah, and
yeah, how?
here's the thing, I think that tell me how. I actually think the actual part of quitting is not that hard, and it can happen in an instant.
Sure.
You don't need to really I think that here's the thing. I think maybe the misconception is that you need to have a lot of gumption or you need to work yourself up. And I think people think like I need to work myself up to the point where I can like storm in there and put in my resignation. I
Right.
don't think it necessarily needs to be like that. And honestly, the way that I work with people is the first step is simply just admitting to yourself that you want to quit. I think that that's the
Mm.
hardest part because I think for so many people, it's just this back and forth. Should I? Should I not? Is it time? Is it not? Blah, blah, blah. And I think like making a decision is an extremely powerful like moment. Doesn't mean I have to quit right now, but it is like, okay, like this chapter is has to end. Maybe it's in 6 months,
Mm.
maybe in a year. Like, but I need to make that decision. And then when you make the decision, it becomes a lot easier to plan. And when you have a plan, it becomes a lot easier to do it. So I think it's not a like, I'm just going to build myself up. I actually think the worst way that people do it is like, they don't like deal with it. It becomes so uncomfortable. And then they
Mhm.
get to the breaking point, and then they're like, I can't stand it any longer. And so I go quit without any plan or any, which by the way is how I did it. So I don't judge anyone. Like that's exactly what happened. I was so burned out that I was like, I will
Mm.
die if I continue this.
Yeah.
And that's why I try to like stop, help people not get to that point. I think when you really can just admit to yourself beforehand that like, okay, I don't want to be here anymore. This has
Right.
got to end. Now I can decide, okay, what does that look like? Like, let's say if it's for a job, what's my financial like plan? Like, do I have enough
Right.
saved up? Do I need to? Can I leave? Like, what am I going to do for the next job? What am I going to do to hold me over? What would I do if it didn't? Because your brain's going to like have a lot of fear. And so it's going to be like, what if it doesn't work? Like, let me come up with a plan. What would I do if the next one
Right.
isn't what I want? Or if I'm starting my business and I don't make enough money? Like, when I've sort of worked through that, it becomes a lot easier to be like, "Oh, okay, I have, this kind of a run like a savings. I have like I know where I'm gonna go. I know when I'm gonna start like making, connections or whatnot." Like then it just almost becomes kind of like a foregone conclusion. It's not to say like I think for a lot of people, even when they have their plan, I get people when it's time to actually quit, there's still
Mhm.
gonna be nerves and fear and doubt, and your brain's gonna be
Right.
screaming, this is scary. But it's not as much as like, I'm just gonna kind of work myself up into going and doing this.
Right
Yeah.
on. Yeah. There's so much I'm just thinking about how much of our stress, anxiety, angst, agita, how much of it is anticipation? Look at my shoulders going up to my ears, just thinking
Totally.
about the anticipation. And just to science it for a second, when we think about dopamine as an anticipatory molecule, I wonder if that's part of what we're doing, why we're doing it. All right,
Mm.
there's some nerd listening who's like, well, actually, I can
Yeah.
explain
Yeah.
that. Please send a
Yeah.
detailed email or video, but let us
Even
know. But
yeah,
I'm
so much.
curious.
Well, the thing is like, and this is why I love this topic, and this is why there's so much to coach on, or there's so much to deal with because, like I said, the actual quitting is not that difficult and it's not that hard, and the actual even the plan is not that hard. It's like a lot of people that come to me like they already know, like their finances are in order, or there is so much, like you said, angst because
Mhm.
it's from a million different directions, and it's all the programming, it's all the thoughts, it's
Right.
all of the beliefs that we've had. It's, am I going to let down all of my coworkers and my boss? Like everyone's going to hate me. Like I hate, we're all, a lot of us are people pleasers, and we've been, raised to like always do the right thing by people. And so we think that it's
Mhm.
wrong to leave. Right. Then we have all of this stuff. It's like our parents drilled in our heads, like you never give up a stable thing.
Oh
Like you
my
never,
god.
you stay in the same job. And so we have that. It's like there's so much ingrained about success basically equaling longevity. Like the longer you are somewhere, the more successful you are. So it's like, well, I can't leave. Like we have all these rules. Like people will be like, well, I've
Such a
only been here
boomer
2 years.
story.
Yeah, I've only been here 2 years. I can't leave. Who said?
The
When did that?
boomers.
Yeah, exactly.
But the
Like
boomers,
that's
right?
what
Like,
that's what I'm saying. So we just have these like arbitrary rules that we think we have to live by. So then when you have all of these things stacked, it makes it so hard to think that it's quote unquote okay for me to leave, right? So it's like, and then you're going to deal with everyone's thoughts. Everyone else is like your family's going to have opinions. Maybe your spouse, your
right.
friends. Everyone's in on the fear. So it's like, oh my god, are you sure? And what if you regret it? And what if you leave and then they don't take you back? And what if the next thing doesn't work out and you're giving up something good? And
Right.
so like truly, what I work on with people mostly is just fear. It's just the thoughts around like all of these what ifs that is like plaguing them to take a, and it's every time this happens, it's one of the funniest things because people are like, I did it. It really wasn't that bad. It was like, it's like they think they're
Yeah.
jumping off a cliff and
Yeah.
they're like stepping off a curb and they're like, oh, oh,
Oh,
that wasn't that okay. I guess
not
I'm
so
on to the
bad.
next thing. Yeah. And exactly. And it was the same thing for me. I honestly thought my world was going to crumble when I quit law. I thought like I was going to die. I was going to
Mm.
lose everything. And it was so fascinating where I was like, huh, the world is still turning. Nobody
Turns
actually
out.
cared. Nothing really happened. Like, it was so anticlimactic that, like,
Right.
now quitting is just so much easier, but because I feel like with each jump, I was like, "Oh, I'm allowed to
Oh,
change my mind. I'm allowed to change other people don't need to understand. Like, I'm allowed to decide that this chapter is over." And so, I just say that to say, like, I think the angst, the anxiety, is very real, and it is likely around a lot of just made up beliefs that you don't have to hold on to anymore, that you can sort of decide for yourself. Like, I mean, one of the reasons I have this platform is because I just think that the connotation around the word quitting is so ridiculous. Like, to have this stigma about
right.
growing and deciding that like a chapter is over, and like, you know, this change that happens to all of us. Like, we all change, we all grow, and yet we are so terrified to change anything is absurd. And so it's just kind of like learning to shed that so that we don't have as much anxiety, we don't have as much angst around it.
Yeah, less cortisol.
Yeah,
It's way
exactly.
better for our bodies. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure. For
yeah,
sure.
yeah,
So, one of the tools I use very early on in my clients is helping them to see, and stay with me for a second,
yeah.
what it feels like in their mind and bodies when they're making sort of bad decisions.
Mm,
So that at the end of Anchored, at the end of 6 months, they're like, I can trust pretty much, I can trust what I want to say, what I want to do,
yeah,
because I have this sort of thing I measure against. And I know I'm in intentionality. I'm out of default, right? Like I'm in my values, right? So I just want to give something to the people listening who are like, but I've quit like 4 things in the last year, and am I a bad person? Am I doing like how do I know if I'm terrible?
oh, sweet
Because you
little
know she's
quick.
out there.
No, she's
She's
definitely out
listening.
there. Oh, there's so many of them, and
Oh,
God, I want to hug everyone. And
me too. Put them in my pocket. Pet
yes,
their hair.
all the time.
Give them
I
little
I'm gonna tell you a really
snacks.
quick a story
Yeah,
about this
tell me.
because I think that it's sometimes easier to see it in other people or like how absurd it is. But I'm gonna first answer that question. I think when we go back to like, accepting yourself or how human of you or realizing like this is your flawed humanness, part
Mm.
of it is even understanding that like you were just saying, your brain operates in a different way. All of ours does. And part of it, and so many of us, I think so much of what has messed us up is that we are trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. We're trying to fit ourselves in a society that wasn't really built for us. And so it's like,
Yeah.
why can't I focus this many hours? Or why can't I? It was like my brain was never built like that. Same thing with this. I think for some people, like some people are much more multi-passionate than other people. So someone might be really happy staying with the same thing. Like they may actually be a super hyper-focused person and working on the same thing over and over them might excite them, right? And you might
Mm.
just be different where it's like you got the attention span of like a couple of months and then you're on to the next thing. And that could be a beautiful skill, right? But when you
Yeah.
spend your time comparing yourself to someone that might stick to something, then you're like, there's something wrong with me. But there isn't. It's just simply like learning how your brain works. One of the things that I really hope to do with the platform that I have built or like the podcast that I have is showing like how natural and normal it is to constantly want to change and evolve. Like we are truly built for that. And simply because we made up this society that was like, you should pick one thing and you should go to school and pick one major and then stick with it for 20 years does not mean that that is how the human brain works. And
Right.
so it's like, I always ask like a question I ask all the time in my program, in my membership is always like, well, people are like, I quit 4 times. I'm like, okay, so what? Like, and then they're like looking at me like, no, but that's bad. Who said? Like, when did you
Mhm.
create this? Right? Like, who cares
Right.
if you quit 12 times? You're trying things. How can you know until you try something if you like it? And then you tried it, you didn't like it. Now you moved on, right? It could be as simple as that, but we make it mean like, I don't stick to things and I don't have any discipline or whatever other bullshit we try to create for ourselves.
Right.
But the
Totally.
story I was going to tell you, because I think it just drives it home, it's so wild. My niece was 12, and she's a very highly anxious child.
Mm.
And so she always had anxiety. But my niece, just as by way of background, like she had been started gymnastics from when she was 4, and she was very
Wow.
good, and she was competing, and she was like, and then she hurt her leg very badly
Mm.
at like 10, and so she had to stop gymnastics. So they tried basketball. She tried that for a season, didn't like it. She quit that. So she was in swimming. She was on swim teams. And my sister was like telling me how she's like having these like panic attacks before um swim meets. Like she was to
Oh.
the point of like vomiting, crying, hysterics. She's
Oh.
12, and my sister, and if I
Oh.
didn't know like my sister and my niece's father, like they could care less. Like they were just like, don't do swimming anymore. Like, no, we don't, we're
Right.
doing it for you,
Yeah.
and but my niece was adamant. Like she would not quit. And she was like, no, I have to go, whatever. And so I took her out one night to like talk to her. And I was like, we were saying, I was like, I don't understand. Like, do you like swimming? And she was like, no. And I was like, then why are we doing this? Like, why is this happening?
Yeah.
I was wondering, like, is the coach mean to you? What's going on that you're this worked up?
Right.
And she's like, I've already quit gymnastics and I quit basketball. If I quit swimming,
Oh.
I'm a failure. She was
Oh.
12.
That's so
I literally
heartbreaking.
It's
Oh.
so heartbreaking. And the thing is I know that her parents weren't the
Ugh.
ones that were putting that
Right.
in her head, because they honestly, but society, like, I was just like, "What how did you internalize this messaging this deeply at
Right.
12 that you were allowing yourself to have such a level of distress over something that does not fucking matter
Who cares?
at all?" And
Who
I was
cares?
not you could literally try every sport under the sun and
Right.
you would be a failure. And
Right.
how would you know? Like, I was like, "How would you know if you tried basketball, how are you going to know if you'd like swimming? Or how are you going to know if you tried tennis without trying tennis? Like, there's no fucking way to know until you
Right.
do it. And then you're like, I didn't actually like this. Good to know. Move on to the next one. It's like, and anyway, so I've worked, like, she's now 17 and she's doing, a lot better. But I remember, like, that was such a gut punch to me, like watching this child, and I see this again. It's easy to look at it in children. It's easy for people to be like, well, that doesn't matter. But I would just offer that all of this shit that we do is made up and all of it doesn't matter.
100%.
If you
Right.
tried a career and it didn't work, it doesn't fucking matter. And it doesn't
Mhm.
mean anything about you. It simply is that you tried something, and maybe like you try something and, like, I look at myself now and like I know a lot more about myself, but like I'm terrible with details. If I was in a job that had a lot of spreadsheets, I would fucking say,
Mm. Oh
okay,
my
good to know.
god.
Like, that's not where I should belong. Okay, now we move me to somewhere else. And I feel like it could be as easy as that if we didn't assign all these arbitrary things to something that has no meaning, where it's like,
Right.
okay, I tried it. It doesn't work with my personality or my brain or whatnot. On to the next thing.
Forget
And
about
so
it.
I know this is the longest answer in the history of the
Oh, I'm
world.
loving it. Keep going.
Yes. But what you were saying about this person is like, I've already quit the 4th thing. Okay, great. Look how
Okay,
much you
great.
learned about yourself. Like,
Yeah.
this is the thing I would say. If people slow down enough to actually just learn from those things, like, get curious. What did I not
Mhm.
like about it? Why did I
Right.
want to quit it? You would get so much further faster than most of us just spend the time beating ourselves up. Like, it's just like, what's wrong with me? I can't stick to anything. I'll never be successful. I'm never consistent, which doesn't do anything. It just sends you into shame and, like, your body shuts down. But
Right.
if you just take it and it's like, okay, I got some information. Clearly, I don't like this. Why didn't I like it? Why do I like this other stuff? Like, now I can learn more about myself and kind of help myself guide, like, myself in the path that's probably better for me. We would be so much further than spending all of this time telling ourselves how terrible we are because we haven't, like, figured it out on, like, take one. End rant.
Mm. I loved your rant. I
Thank
actually
you.
just subscribed. I liked and followed on Apple Podcasts and gave it a 5-star rating and review.
Thank you so
That's how
much.
much. No, thank you so much. It was such a good rant.
Yeah.
Put
No,
that on a t-shirt.
you should. It's gonna be a long t-shirt, but I
It's
feel
gonna
like
be a
every
great one.
I get very fired up about this because
I love
it's
it.
the amount of suffering that people create for no reason. Like,
It's so
it's not
unnecessary.
actually real, Like, that's I wanna shake them and be like, "You are allowed to try." Like, so I still get very amped about this because I see it every day. Every single day people come and they're this, like, shell of themselves because they have beat themselves up over the most arbitrary things. And yes.
Yeah. No,
I'm curious.
I just had a thought, and I don't wanna ADHD
What?
lose it.
Oh.
Something about the suffering Olympics,
Mhm.
right? Are we taking on suffering and making this worse because of the guilt and shame of leaving the thing or this whole failure story? And so if we don't make ourselves appear outwardly and inwardly like we're suffering like friggin'
Oh,
hell, then we have no justification.
I love 1,000,000%. One of the biggest I had, like, a
Wow.
podcast episode about this.
Oh.
And I have this, like, as, like, a thing that one of the, like, phrases I always say is, "You don't have to hate it to leave." Because a lot of us, what we do
Mm.
is we make ourselves hate it so that
Yes.
we can feel justified to leave. We think that, like,
Right.
if I complain about it enough to everybody in my life, and if I
Right.
grow it and I make it this bigger deal, then everyone will be like, "Oh my god,
Oh,
this is the
get
worst
out of
person,
there.
gotta go," you know?
Right. It codependent thinking does the same
Yes,
thing where we're like, which I'm gonna pick something banal. Which dress should I buy? And you externalize it because if you don't
yeah,
like the result, it wasn't your fault.
totally.
Right. So if your mom's like, but honey, you have to quit that job. It's terrible. And then you
Exactly.
regret it. It's her fault.
Yeah.
Oh,
And then,
brains
like,
are
we also, like,
sneaky.
we're, like, looking for permission too.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
for so
Yeah.
many of us, because we're scared of, like, what if I'm gonna regret it? But then if everybody else is like, "You should quit this job," you're like, "Oh, maybe
Oh,
they're right." Like, they gave me
right.
and that's, like, going back, like, this is full circle of, like, getting, like, really quiet with yourself is most of us know what we wanna do. We just want other people to rubber stamp it. We want other
Hmm.
people to tell us, like, "Yeah, that's a good idea." So then
Yeah.
if it doesn't go right, I can be like, "Well, you guys all said it too. You guys all thought
Right.
I should leave." As opposed to
Man.
being like, "I'm an adult and I'm gonna make this choice and I don't wanna be here anymore and I don't have to hate it, and actually it's totally fine. Like, everything is fine. It just isn't the type of work I wanna do and it doesn't stimulate me and I hate doing that," whatever. So many of us have such a hard time with that, that we make ourselves so miserable in that situation for so long just to feel justified. So, like, I love that you brought that up because I think it's dead on.
Brains are so wild.
So wild.
So wild.
Wild.
Jeez Louise. So I'm going to do what I do. Pull out the kitten step, like the super practical kitten
Yeah.
step. Tell me what you think about this. Let's workshop it.
Let's do it.
And so one of the things we've been doing, like as a practice, is being really clear about the things we don't want to do as we're both stepping into more interdependence and like
Yeah.
flexing those muscles. And
I
so,
love
like, I've recently quit emptying the dishwasher because I don't like it. I'll hand wash for 20 hours. I won't
that.
leave that sink. I love it. The hot water, the
Yeah.
soap, like, oh, it's so satisfying when you get the grease off the pan. But I don't want to empty that dishwasher.
Mhm.
So, is that maybe the kitten step of like quitting tiny
Yes.
things
Yes.
and getting support?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
go,
Yeah.
go. What
So I
came
was
to your
gonna say,
brilliant
like,
mind?
what I was gonna say is, like, honestly, a very small amount of what I do is helping people, like, quit big things like their career or, like, relationships.
Yeah,
Most of it, and this is why, like, I think it's so absurd to, like, have a bad connotation with quitting, is I think we're always quitting things in our lives, and part of life is really
yeah.
figuring out, like, what works and what doesn't, and you can call it what you want, but it's like, in order to try something new, you have to let go of other things, and so one of the biggest things I teach people, especially women,
Mm.
is there are so many micro quits. There's so many things every
Huh.
day that you get to decide, I no longer want to do this.
Hmm.
It no longer should be on me to do this. And I think for so many of us that are burned out, it is not just because of, yes, it's work, but it's also the millions of other obligations that we put on ourselves. So maybe it's, I don't want to decorate the house for Christmas this year, or I
Right.
don't want to, go to, like, the in-laws for this holiday party, or even
Right,
smaller.
right.
Like you were saying, like,
Yeah.
even like if a kitten step might just be like, I don't want to do a deep clean of the house. Like, maybe I'm gonna hire someone just to come every 2
Right.
weeks to do that, or whatnot, or
Yeah.
I'm gonna delegate, but there's
Right.
so many things that one of the things I have people do, so like an exercise that people could try to do just to see the absurdity, is sit down and just write down everything you think you have to do. Like, and break it up in areas of your life. Just start with work. And I mean, write everything you think you have to, everything at home, everything for your partner, everything for your kids, everything for your health, everything for your eating, everything for your mental health. Like, when you see the list, it's wild. You're like, it's obviously
So
impossible,
much.
but
Of
impossible by,
course.
like, like a factor of 10,
Right, right,
And
right.
when you start looking at that and you're like, okay, what are things I really don't actually have to do? And quit those. Like, even in your mind, even having it as like
Yeah.
a working thing of like,
Yeah.
should organize the closet and I should, and
Right.
like taking that and being like, no, I shouldn't. I shouldn't. I don't want to do that anymore.
Hmm.
And I feel like starting there really does help you realize like one, the nobody's gonna die. The earth is not gonna swallow me whole if I stop like decorating my house for Christmas. Um, it's gonna be fine. Most people don't even notice half the stuff if I don't do them. And I do have a lot more control over this. Like I have a lot more control over like when I'm feeling exhausted all the time, like I do get to say, like, no, I don't need to do that anymore.
Mm.
Like we did that
Yeah.
last year, we're not doing that this year. Super powerful.
Super duper powerful. And I'm just seeing how it echoes out into I can quit talking to that relative who
Yeah.
just monologues at me. I can
Yeah.
quit answering that phone. I can quit
Yeah.
calling her. I can quit, right? The millions of interpersonal things we do to attempt to source belonging. But
Yes.
if and when we're remembering that we're allowing ourselves to, how human of me, and of
Yes.
course I did,
Yes.
then we can allow ourselves to we tell this story, I have to be in this role. It is
Yeah.
vital I'm in this role.
Oh,
And this is what that those manuals for ourselves. That's
yes.
what this role looks like. What if, and I'm hearing you say, rewrite the role.
Totally.
Rewrite
And
the
always
role.
and even just start with questioning the role. Like, do I
Yeah.
have I think for so many like, I will say for me, like, as a mother of young kids, I found myself thrust into this role, not just a mother, but like
Mm.
Pinterest mom and, PTA mom.
Oh.
And I very
Mm.
quickly, like, luckily, like, I just can't handle that stuff. So I'm in a community of all moms that do that. And I was
Wow.
like, nope. I opted like
Yeah.
I love you. I'm not doing it. I'm not
Yeah.
volunteering. I'm not coming to the school. I'm not doing all this stuff. I can't do it. And there was a lot of guilt because it's put
Mm.
on you that you should and that this is the role of a mother and this is and it's really even questioning, like, is that what I'm supposed to be doing? Like, is is this like, does this mean, and the more I question, like, how do I want to show up for my kids? What do I want my role to be? There are some things that are very important to me that I do want to do. And then there's other things that it was like, was basically placed on me. And I'm like, no, I don't, this isn't mine. This isn't mine to
Right.
and I feel like it's not easy. There's a lot of guilt still. There's a lot of like working through that because so much around you is like, my kids will be like, "Why don't you ever volunteer at school? Why don't we ever see you?" And I have to have these conversations. But I'm telling you, I'm so much happier because I have so much more
Right.
time because I'm not trying to
Yeah.
be everything to everybody.
Right. Well, we forget and there's physics and that, like, you can't actually
Yeah,
be in 2 places at the same
exactly.
time, and I remember when it dawned on me that I everything I was choosing to do meant I was not doing something else,
Yes.
and it sounds so simplistic and almost insulting,
Yeah.
right, to, like, say to someone, but it
Yeah.
was mind-blowing that if
Totally.
I volunteer to do X, Y, and Z for all these other people,
Yeah.
I'm not reading, I'm not taking a bath, I'm not
Yeah.
studying the Dharma, I'm not on my trampoline. I'm
Yeah.
obsessed with my trampoline.
I love
I'm just I'm just like,
that.
I'm not living my life.
Yes.
So
For
how
sure.
can I quit that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Starts with the dishwasher, doesn't it?
Starts with the dishwasher always.
My God, I just
Listen,
don't
I'm gonna give you a little
understand.
life hack. I know you don't saying children. Turns out they're great at emptying a dishwasher. That's like the one
Really?
chore. I felt the same way. I hated it, and then I was like, "Oh,
Don't like
I can make them do it."
make the
And so
children do it.
now I feel the same way. Like I don't mind washing the dishes, but I don't know
What is
what
it?
is it about that? So
But
now I have my
but
little
no.
minions.
Could I invite the neighborhood children in?
Yes, yes, you could. It might be creepy. Then people in
It
your neighborhood
might
might question why you're inviting children into your home, but
every morning at like 7:30. We just unlock the door. Come forth, children of the neighborhood, empty the dishwasher
what?
and be gone. And
Yeah,
then but put
we
the
don't
kettle
have
on before you go. Do you
that
know
would
what I'm
be a
saying?
nice service.
Little
Listen, they
little
like to make a little
respect.
bit a little
Yeah.
job for them. I like it. I think it's
I mean,
great.
that sounds great.
I'm
What's a living wage for an 8-year-old? Like a quarter a week these days? What even is an allowance
I
anymore?
don't even know,
I'm so out of
honestly.
touch,
So
man.
am I, and I have them. I don't even
What are you gonna do? Nothing to do.
It's
Nothing, just
nothing
keep
to
on.
do.
Just keep on moving on. That's all there is. You and me and the dishwasher. I love
Oh,
there's probably somebody doing a PhD in neuroscience right now who's like, I know the reason.
Yeah, that you hate dish I know. No, there's
Yeah,
absolutely a reason, but
there has to be.
I think it's also
It's
similar to, like,
unnatural.
laundry, like, it's fine doing it and folding it, but putting the clothes back in drawers
Oh, it's
makes me
hateful.
wanna kill myself.
Hateful.
Yeah,
Hateful. Yeah.
there's something about that
There's something
organization.
about it. There really is. But meanwhile, I wanna buy every container and, like,
Yes, or
acrylic box with a lid basket. Girl, do not come at me about a basket.
this is we have whole
Oh,
stores to give for containers because the
because I
addiction is
love them.
real.
Here,
The
let me
addiction
show
is
you.
real.
I just got this set of bags. This is not an ad for
I
Bagu. They
love
don't care about me. But there's a hot pink one and a little blue one.
That's so cute.
What do I need more containing item? No, because I don't wanna put anything in it, but I want everything to be in it already. What are brains?
Brains are fascinating.
Brains are fascinating hot messes.
I love it. How human of
Yeah.
them.
How very human of them indeed.
Yeah.
You are what studies call a delight and a half. And, thank you
Technical
for
term?
sharing. That is the actual scientific, technical term, and, if you're a neuroscience studying awesomeness, keep your mouth shut, and, that's enough out of you.
Yeah.
Everyone listening, I'm sure, wants to follow you in all of the places. Where can they find you?
You can really find me everywhere at Lessons from a Quitter. So I'm mostly on Instagram. You can come to say hi, but my website is lessonsfromaquitter.com. So you can go get some freebies there. I have some free classes and all the stuff about, quitting. And like, again, we focus on career, but it's really quitting all the things. So come on, I have a podcast. Since you listen to podcasts, come find me, say hello. I would love to chat with you.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. You are a delight as
It
well.
was
I always love talking to you.
likewise. My sweet love, thank you so much for joining me for that conversation. It was so much fun. Goli is like, she's just so amazing, and we had such a blast. And there's so many more kitten steps that we could talk even more about. So many more like organizational ideas to talk about. I love a basket. There's so much more. So I will definitely have her back. She's a gem. Go check her work out. And let's do what we do. Gentle hand on your heart should you feel so moved. And remember, you are safe. You are held. You are loved. And when one of us heals, we help heal the world. Be well, my beauty. I'll talk to you soon. Mwah. Ciao.